Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. I believe we're ready to ask whether there's further evidence for the state.
Yes, Your Honor. The state will call Michelle Holden from the State Crime Lab.
Ma'am, if you would, place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lively?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am. If you would, please just introduce yourself to the jury and tell them how you're employed.
My name is Michelle Holden. I work at the North Carolina State Crime Laboratory. I'm a body fluid identification analyst assigned to the forensic biology section.
And what's a forensic biologist?
Generally, as far as body fluid identification goes, I'll receive evidence in criminal cases. I'll review that evidence for the presence of body fluids such as blood and semen. If I identify a body fluid, I'll then swab or cut that and prepare that sample to move on to another analyst in the biology section for DNA analysis. Once I'm done with my examination, I'll issue a laboratory report and then I'll testify if I need to.
All right. And how long have you been employed in this capacity at the State Crime Lab?
I've been with the lab since July of 2012.
All right. Can you tell me a little bit about your educational background, your training and experience?
I have a Bachelor's of Science from Georgia State University and a Master's of Forensic Science with a concentration in Forensic Molecular Biology from the George Washington University. Once I was hired on with the North Carolina State Crime Laboratory, I entered an extensive training program in body fluid identification that entailed journal article reviews, and lectures, training samples, simulated cases. In addition to those, I entered a 3-month supervised case internship where I worked alongside a qualified analyst as they worked their cases. It ultimately culminated in a competency examination, which I had to perform 100%, and I did, a written exam, and then a moot court.
I see. And that was all part of the, I guess, specialized training beyond your degrees once you came on with the State Crime Lab. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, have you ever testified as an expert before in state court here in North Carolina?
I have.
Okay. How many times?
Over 15.
All right. Great. All in state court or any federal court?
They're all state.
State court. And have they all been in Wake County or in other counties as well?
They've been throughout the North Carolina.
But you are your office is actually here at the Raleigh State Crime Lab, correct? Not in Nashville.
That's correct.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I would tender Analyst Holden in the field of bodily fluids analysis.
No objection.
Her testimony will be received as proffered.
Tell me a little bit about how you go about specifically testing for the presence of blood.
So when I first receive an item in evidence, I'm going to make sure it's the item that I was supposed to get. Then I will open that item and I will do what's called a visual examination. This is literally just looking with my eyes at the item for any red-brown stains. If I observe any red-brown stains, I will number them, and then I will take a photograph before I perform any analysis. After I've done that, I will do what's called a screening test. It's called Kastle-Meyer test. The screening test, it'll tell me that there could be the presence of that body fluid on there. This would be for blood, but it doesn't necessarily confirm that that body fluid is blood. So I will take a piece of filter paper, and on the areas that I numbered where I saw the red-brown staining, I will actually pass that piece of filter paper on that stained area, and then I'll add 3 chemicals to the filter paper itself. And what I'm looking for is a color change, for it to go from clear to pink. If I see a pink color change, that's a positive result. If there's no color change, that's a negative result.
And again, this is the process for the Kastle-Meyer testing, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I think we've heard it referred to previously as a presumptive test. Is that correct?
Presumptives or screening, it means the same thing. It just, again, means that we can't conclusively confirm that that is blood or that body fluid that we're testing for.
I see, but you can collect it and then potentially pass it on for further analysis like DNA testing, things of that nature?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I want to talk to you about this case. Did you receive a number of items related to this matter on May 13th of 2014?
I did.
Okay, and where were they received from?
I received the items and evidence in this case on the 14th of April, and it was a hand-to-hand transfer from an evidence custodian assigned to our section.
I see. And when you receive these items, is there a request made from law enforcement about the type of analysis they would like for you to perform?
We'll receive a request for examination form, and it just briefly gives us a synopsis and outlines their case information as well as information of individuals involved in the case, and then list out all the evidence that would have been received by the laboratory and the types of examinations for each item.
Sure. And it's important for you to have a synopsis of the case because it's going to be up to you, I guess, to search for potential bodily fluids or blood in this case. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, let's talk about what you received. First of all, item number 9, you received one silver and black model CF-380 pistol. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now approach, Your Honor.
Yes.
Now, this is State's Exhibit 83. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
State's Exhibit 83 is lab item 9, which is the firearm in this case that I received.
Okay. And of course, there's some different. There's a zip tie on it now. There was not a yellow zip tie on it when you received it, was there?
I don't believe so. There's not any notation of that.
What? And I'm sorry, Madam Clerk. What number are we on? And contained, along with the pistol, this is State's Exhibit 248. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do. This would have been the brown piece of paper that I would have performed my examination on. So we have a countertop much like a bench top that we will perform our examination on. And before doing any kind of exams on an item, I will bleach it, make sure that it is sterile. And then in addition to, I'll place a brown piece of craft paper before I put the item on that, and then I'll do my examination with making sure there's a layer between even the bench and the item itself.
Okay, and you've placed your initials on that as well, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so it's sort of folded up neatly and taped. Is there anything contained inside, or does it just fold out into the craft paper that you laid the firearm on?
The reason I folded up and I initial it to show that I'm the one who placed it in there, so initial and dated, but the reason I'm folded up just in case anything falls off the item itself, it can be contained and later examined maybe by another section or if it needed to be examined for any reason.
All right, fine. This does appear to be the craft paper you used and the same as when you packaged it back up.
It is.
Your Honor, I'd ask to move States 246 into evidence? 248 into evidence?
No objection.
It's allowed.
Well, now, you referred to States 83, which is the box that contains the gun, as item 9. Is that the item number that y'all assign it at the crime lab?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and tell me about the analysis you performed on the gun or any potential evidence you collected off of it.
I would have performed the screening test that I spoke of earlier, the Castlemeyer test, on the firearm itself. And in addition to that, depending on my results, I also created a few sub-items from the gun. from the
You
firearm.
created some sub-items, is that what you said?
Yes,
Okay. And those would be swabbings, is that correct?
that's correct.
What's a swabbing?
A swabbing is, it literally looks like a Q-tip, and it's a sterile swab. What I'll do is, if I identify a body fluid, it's one way I can collect that body fluid off the item itself. So I'll add some distilled water, and then I'll pass the swab over the stained area, the red-brown stain that I've identified, and collect that red-brown staining onto the swab itself so that it can be preserved and moved on to for DNA analysis.
Okay, so that's you actually collecting the blood, or what appears to be the presumptively at least blood, so that it can be further analyzed off of the swabbing.
That's correct.
Okay, and I'll approach you with some swabbings here in a minute, but I want to talk to you about the other items you received and analyzed. If I may approach with 230 and 233.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, there's some gloves there if you'd like to use them. But what I'm placing in front of you now, State's Exhibit 230 and State's Exhibit 233. Or I'm sorry. Yes, State's Exhibit 230, State's Exhibit 233. State's Exhibit 231 and State's Exhibit 232. And if you could start with 230 right here. Do you recognize that bag? See any markings of yours on there?
Yes, so State's Exhibit 230 is lab item 16. The way I can identify that is the unique lab sticker that has been placed on it when it entered the laboratory. Additionally, it has my receive date, my open and seal dates for the examination, and finally my sealed date and initials from when I finished my examination and sealed up the item itself.
Great. If you wouldn't mind opening that and examining it and see if you recognize it.
Yes, I do recognize it.
Okay, what do you recognize it to be?
This is item 16 that I received in this case, which is one Timberland boot, size 7.
All right, great. And let's move on to the next item, I think states 231. Well, first of all, does that Timberland boot seem to be in the same condition as it was when you completed your collection of evidence or swabbing?
Yes, it does.
All right, great. If you'll look at states 231. And again, as you're opening that bag, do you recognize that bag as be one that you collected and marked on?
Yes, I do. Again, it's State's Exhibit 231 is lab item 15, and I can recognize it for the same reasons with the lab sticker and the received date, open seal date, and then my initials.
And after analyzing states 231, can you tell us what it is, and do you recognize it?
Yes.
What do you recognize?
This
it to
is
be?
lab item 15, and the reason I recognize it again, it has the sticker on the inside which I identified, and it is one Timberland boot, size 7.
Thank you. Let's move to States 232. What do you recognize? Do you recognize States 232?
Yes, States 232 is lab item 20, which I received in this case. Again, on the exterior are the markings that I spoke of earlier, and then on the item itself is the sticker I placed on it. And this would be one pair of Levi Strauss jeans.
Great, thank you. And then let's go to States 233. And what do you recognize States 233 to be?
States 233 is lab item 17, and that is a one Nike brand hoodie size medium that I received in this case.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Now, we're going to talk about each of those individually in just a moment, so you can kind of leave them out on top of their bags if you want. However, you mentioned that you basically collected swabbings from some items, and then did you also actually cut out areas from some other items?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell me about what items you might have cut from and why you would have cut instead of swabbed?
Typically on a clothing item, I will cut out a stain. It's easier than taking a swab and trying to remove the stain from the cloth just because it's more porous, it's going to soak in. So it's a better sample to send a cutting from that item on. Something like a smooth surface, taking a swabbing and adding the water to the swab and removing it will remove the stain and transfer that swab onto transfer that stain onto the swab better than me trying to cut out, say, a piece of this wood.
Sure. And you do that with clothes, and that way it's not a swabbing. You actually transfer what you found to be blood for the DNA analysis. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Your Honor, I've got what I've marked as State's Exhibit 249. If I may approach.
Yes, sir.
Now, this is State's 249. Do you recognize this large envelope?
Yes, States Exhibit 249 is the DNA packet that I created in this case and would have transferred on for DNA analysis.
Okay, and so you recognize that to be your package, and you understand it to contain the cuttings or swabbings from this particular case. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Would you open that envelope and check the contents for me? how many smaller envelopes are contained within the larger envelope which states 249?
9 envelopes.
9 envelopes, okay. And do you have them in a particular order?
I do. I have them in numeric order.
Okay. If you'll hand them to me in numeric order, and we'll deal with them one at a time. So this first one I'm marking, it states Exhibit 249A, and I'll hand it back to you. Can you tell me what this is?
This would be sub-item 9-1. It is a swabbing I took from the receiver, safety grip, mag release, and trigger for skin cells for touch DNA.
All right. And you recognize this to contain the swabbing that you did in this case?
Yeah, yes, I do. It has the unique lab sticker which I placed on it.
All right, and as well as your initials and a date, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, Your Honor, we'd ask to move states 249A into evidence.
It's allowed.
If you'll hand me the next one. So I'm marking this state's Exhibit 249B. Can you tell me what's contained in state's 249B?
This would be lab sub-item 9-2, and it's a swabbing taken collectively of areas 1 and 2 from the front of the pistol, the firearm.
All right. And does it appear, you recognize that both from your markings, the number, and your personal experience with it, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, Your Honor, we'd move states 249B into evidence.
It's allowed.
If you'll hand me the next one, I'm going to mark this states 249C. And so, and before we get to C, so these, you've marked these as items 9-1 and 9-2 on your lab report, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and the firearm is 9, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so these are 2 separate swabbings taken from the pistol. And you said one was for touch DNA, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Were they both for touch DNA comparison, or did you detect the presence of blood on one of them?
No, for item 9, the firearm, I did detect the presence of blood. It gave chemical indications for the presence of blood, and that's where I would have swabbed areas 1 and 2 collectively and sent that swabbing on.
I see. Okay. Thank you. So let's move to states 249C. Can you tell me what's contained in that envelope?
This would be sub-item 16-1, and it's a swabbing taken from the boot.
All right. Let's see. There are 2 boots. Do you know which boot that was taken from?
It's which one, the one that was labeled item 16 for the lab, but it doesn't indicate right or left. I'm so sorry.
That's fine, but it's boot item 16. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
Okay. All right. And again, you recognize that as the swabbing you took. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Your Honor, we move states 249C into evidence.
Allowed.
Let's look at the next one, and I'll mark that 249D. Can you tell us what the envelope marked 249D contains?
This would be lab sub-item 16-2, and this is another swabbing taken from that same boot, which was item 16.
Okay. And it appears to be the same as it was, and you recognize it as such.
That's correct.
We'd move states 249D into evidence, Your Honor.
It's allowed.
You'll give me the next one, which I'll mark 249E. This is an envelope. Can you tell me what envelope 249E contains?
This would be lab sub-item 17-1. This is a cutting that was taken from the sleeve of item 17, which would have been the black hoodie.
All right. And you recognize that both from the numbers and your markings, is that correct?
That's correct.
We move states 249E into evidence, Your Honor.
It's allowed.
And I'll be marking this as states 249F. Can you tell me what states the envelope marked 249F contains?
This would be lab sub-item 17-2. It is another cutting taken from the black hoodie, which was lab item 17.
All right. And it appears to be the same, and you recognize it based on your markings, is that correct?
That's correct.
We'd move states 249F into evidence.
It's allowed.
All right, let's take a look at that next envelope. I'm marking this 249G. Can you tell me what the envelope marked 249G contains?
This would be lab subitem 20-1. It is a cutting taken from the jeans, which was lab item 20.
All right. And you recognize this as being that envelope containing that cutting, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, we'll move states 249G into evidence, Your Honor.
It's allowed.
Next one is marked states 249H. Can you tell me what this envelope contains, ma'am?
This is lab subitem 20-2. It is another cutting taken from the jeans, which was lab item 20.
Thank you. And you, again, recognize this based on your markings, correct?
That's correct.
We move states 249H into evidence.
No objection.
Allowed.
One more envelope. This is 249I. Can you tell me what's contained in states 249I?
This would be lab subitem 20-3, and it's another cutting taken from the jeans, which was lab item 20.
Your Honor, we move states 249I into evidence as well.
No objection.
It's allowed.
And Your Honor, at this time, I'd ask permission for the analyst to maybe step down and display some of these items to the jury.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the gun is State's Exhibit 83, your item 9. Could you pick up that gun? Well, first of all, it's still inoperable, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And would you be able to show the jurors where you detected the presence of blood and from where you took swabbings?
It's difficult to see, but there should be a small marking here that indicates 2, area 2, and there would have been a second one here, which needs to be removed.
Now, the marking, is that a marking you made?
Whatever we're hearing.
Could you repeat that, please, for the jurors at the other end?
So this would have been markings I made, so it kind of looks needs to be area 2 here, and then there would have been the area north here, which has been wiped off, which would have been number 1. These would have been 2 areas that I would have seen red brown staining, and I would have done that screening test for, which was positive. In addition, I discussed taking a swabbing for touch samples, and that would have come from the rough portions here on the slides, the trigger, and the safeties, and the magazine release.
Thank you, ma'am. And for touch samples, it's not that you saw the presence of anything that appeared to be blood, it's just using your common sense that these are the places where someone's skin might come into contact with the gun, but still working parts.
That's correct.
Okay. But the swabbings from the muzzle area and the side of the gun were places where you actually saw what appeared to be blood and presumptively was blood. Is that correct?
That would have, yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Let's move on to items, your items 15 and 16. These are the boots. Now, okay, looking first at your item 15, one Timberland boot. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes.
In doing an examination of a rubbing taken from the boot, were you able to find the an indication for the presence of blood on that particular boot?
Lab item 15 did not find any indications of the presence of blood, no.
All right, that's fine. But next, let's pick up item 16, your item 16. That's the other boot. Okay. Did you take a swabbing from that boot as well?
I did take 2 swabbings actually from this boot.
All right. And do you have the areas marked where the swabbings were taken from on the boot, much like you had with the gun?
Yes, I have all the areas I would have tested marked on the boot.
I see. Your Honor, may she step down and
Yes.
show the jurors?
Yes, please.
Ma'am, if you would just step down and show the jurors the areas from which you took swabbings, which may have indicated the presence of blood.
Actually 4 areas that I tested, so there's going to be 4 areas that marked, but only 2 areas that actually swabbed to go on for DNA. So you're going to see 1, 2, and area 3 and 4 marked. These are all areas that I would have noted either some sort of staining that would have been interesting for me to test using the screening test. You have 1, 2, and 3 and 4.
And what drew your attention to those particular areas?
There was just a different coloration, staining, the way the shine of the light hit it. There was a little bit of reddish brown staining that could be noted as well. And that would generally give me an indication that I need to test that area for the presence of blood.
And so you collected 2 swabbings. Which 2 areas did you actually collect the swabbings from of the 4?
It would have been area 1 as well as area 3, and each of those would have been a separate swabbing.
I see. Thank you. Let's move next to your item number 17. That'd be the Nike hoodie. Now, were you able to take cuttings from this item of evidence?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And I believe you took 2 cuttings, is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you see them on the hoodie, the areas that you cut out, and could you step down and show those to the jury?
Yes. So very similar to the boots, all the areas I would have tested or seen by ground screening are going to be marked. There's about 10 areas, different areas that are marked on the shirt. For example, this is area 5, just to give an example. Areas that were the Kaplan-Meier positive, which was a screening test positive. I chose 2 areas on the hoodie itself to send on. Those were cut out. That can be seen here at area 3, where the actual stain is completely cut out. As well as up here, area 9, again, where that area was removed from the hoodie itself.
So area 3, it looks like it's taken from the right wrist area of the hoodie, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And then you said area 9 was also taken,
Yes, it was.
and that looks like it was taken kind of right next to the logo on the left chest.
That's correct.
How many areas did you note? Were there 9 areas noted or more?
There's approximately 10 areas that I tested.
Why did you select those 2?
I selected these just because of just location and trying to find the best areas that could show a potential transfer. One was on just different locations of the body itself so that they could be separate stains. They may not have come from the same event. And generally, sometimes by the way that stain visually looks to me, or the way that the reaction is so strong, the reaction, paint coloration may drive me to make that cutting or swab in that area. Just telling you maybe a better sample for to go on for you.
So you selected maybe the strongest samples, I mean, in terms of their reaction to the testing?
That's correct. That's one of the reasons.
Sure. All right, thank you. And then I want to direct you to item 20. That's the genes. Now, I believe your report reflects that there's 3 cuttings from item 20, the genes.
That's correct.
Okay. Are you able to locate those on them, examining them today?
Yes.
And, ma'am, if you wouldn't mind, Your Honor, with your permission, if she could step down and just show the jurors the cuttings she made in this case.
Yes.
I made 3 cuttings from the jeans. The first one was area 1, located down here towards the front of the knee, left knee, excuse me. The second was area 5, located here on the right leg off the top near the pocket. And the last was in the rear section. That was area 4. And it's that right leg.
How many total areas did you mark in, on this article of clothing?
I believe it was 5, but I have to refer back.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, ma'am. Now, again, with all of these swabbings and cuttings that you did, were each one of them tested for the using the Castlemeyer test for the presence of blood?
All the majority of them were the touch sample from the firearm itself, sub-item 9-1 was not.
Correct. And that's 9-1 where the working parts of the gun were swabbed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's for touch DNA. So is that just DNA that's transferred by skin cells from someone, just making contact with an item, but not necessarily bleeding on it?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And you also received some other items, what are known as blood cards and DNA swabs. Is that correct?
That's correct.
A blood card from Angela Taylor, a blood card from Sylvester Taylor, and DNA swabs from LaTanya Holden and Nathan Holden. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Would you have performed any analysis or used these in, I guess, your portion of the review of this evidence?
No, so these are what are called known standards. We know what body fluid and what part of the body these would have come from, whether it's from saliva sample from a person's mouth or from their blood. So I won't do any examination on that. It will be transferred on directly for DNA analysis.
And who do you transfer, or in this case, who did you transfer all of these items onto?
I transferred these items back to our evidence custodian, Sarah Clay, who was assigned to the forensic biology section. To include all the DNA items as well.
All right, and do you know if a DNA analysis was done of these items?
Yes, they were.
Okay. But that's not done by you, correct? That's done by Michelle Hannon?
In this case, it was done by Michelle Hannon, yes.
And you're Michelle Harden and she's Michelle Hannon?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Now, is it just the swabbings and the cuttings, the blood cards and the DNA swabs that are sent to her, or the entire clothing items sent?
No, just the swabbings, cuttings, and then standards.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, great. Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Cross-examination. All right, thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
We'll break for lunch at this point and resume at 2:30. Members of the jury, please recall all the instructions. Don't talk among yourselves or with anyone else about the case. Don't form or express any opinions about the outcome. No media or independent investigation into these matters. And no conversation or communication with parties, witnesses, or lawyers. Leave your notepads in your chairs. Gather in the deliberation room at 2:30. Everyone else, please remain seated. Anything that we need to take up before we recess?
I was just thinking that I believe the state's planning to call the medical examiner in the afternoon, and they're handing me now the pictures. So we might, I haven't had a chance to review that, but we might, I'll review them over lunch, and then maybe we can have at some point.
That'd be fine. Just let me know if there's anything that you wish to have me consider with respect to those pictures. All right, we'll be in recess until 2:30.